Computer-generated effects are ubiquitous in Hollywood, so when something amazing happens on screen, audiences usually assume they're seeing a digital fantasy. But despite the surge in CGI, some directors are still committed to doing special effects the old-fashioned way, before today's digital wizardry existed. From puppets to prosthetics to old-school camera tricks, we've rounded up some of the most insane scenes you'll never believe were created without computers. Flipping out. Fact. Director Christopher Nolan actively dislikes CGI and believes that audiences prefer the real thing as much as he does, so he uses practical effects in his films whenever possible. Remember that epic car chase in The Dark Knight that ended with a giant 18-wheeler going butt over tea kettle right in the middle of an actual city block?
He missed!
Special effects genies used computers to edit out some of the equipment involved in the stunt, but everything else was completely real, aided by a remote-controlled piston that was installed in the truck to propel its rear off the ground. The scene was filmed from 7 different angles, because when you're making an 18-wheeler do a somersault in the middle of the night in downtown Chicago, there is no such thing as take 2. Anti-gravity fisticuffs. The Dark Knight director didn't limit his commitment to practical effects only to his Batman franchise, which, don't forget, also included blasting a plane in half mid-air.
Now what's the next step of your master plan?
Crashing this plane.
In Inception, Nolan and his team created the gravity-defying dream within a dream fight scene by channeling none other than talented singer and hat enthusiast Jamiroquai and built a 100-foot-long hotel hallway on a rotating set. According to actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the filming process required as much mental flexibility as it did acrobatic balance. Telling E! Online, I had to think of it like, this is the ground. Okay, now this is the ground. And now this is the ground. It was just that the ground was always moving under me. That was the mind game I had to play to make it work. With a camera mounted on a track that ran the length of the set, Nolan was able to create seamless, stable shots even as the hallway itself spun 360 degrees. But Nolan wasn't the one who invented the old rotating room. The blood-bathing bed. CGI wasn't much of an option back in 1984, especially for a low-budget horror flick like Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street. So when Craven's horror franchise introduced audiences to the original fedora-wearing monster, it had to pull off its nightmarish special effects the old-fashioned way. These days, the soul-sucking blood geyser that consumed Johnny Depp would probably be done with computers. But for the original Nightmare, the effects team came up with an inventive way to pull it off. The bedroom set was built on a rotating axis which could be turned a full 360 degrees. What you see is actually an upside-down set. Once the bedroom was flipped, all they had to do was pour 500 gallons of fake blood through the bed and let gravity do the rest. Simple, right? Men Becoming Wolves. An American Werewolf in London featured animatronic heads, prosthetic body parts, and the most elaborate assortment of merkins in the history of film. Werewolf's iconic transformation scene was achieved with nothing but good old-fashioned practical effects, and the magic of Rick Baker. The effects guru created prosthetic versions of actor David Norton's limbs, then fitted them with air bladders to make them deform as Norton's character turned from man to wolf. For the facial transformation, 2 animatronic heads created the illusion of the actor's head reshaping itself into something more wolf-like. And the furry overcoat? That effect used a latex skin threaded with thousands and thousands of wiry hairs. Baker filmed the hair being pulled backwards through the skin, then reversed the shot to stimulate rapid growth. The final result was so realistic and terrifying that it earned its creator the 1982 Academy Award for Best Makeup. And when the movie got its inevitable 21st century reboot in the form of An American Werewolf in Paris, the terrible CGI effects couldn't hold a candle to this practical wizardry. The Killer T-Rex. Hold on to your butts. There's a reason the Lizard King of Jurassic Park was such an imposing presence. He was a real-life, full-sized animatronic that nearly killed someone on set. The T-Rex weighed 9,000 pounds and was built on a skeleton made of hydraulic motors and moving metal parts. He was also decidedly dangerous. During the production, a crew member was unlucky enough to be stuck inside the belly of the beast during a power outage, sending thousands of pounds of hydraulics crushing down on him. Fortunately, he lived to tell the tale. Even the digital dinosaurs of Jurassic Park were often a combination of CGI and puppetry. For instance, the Brachiosaurus that sneezed all over Lex was only a digisaur from the neck down. The head was all real for most of its time on screen, as was the copious spray of dino snot, much to the dismay of actress Ariana Richards. Little Hobbits, Big World. Rather than rely completely on post-production CGI to shrink Elijah Wood or embiggen Ian McKellen, Peter Jackson often used old-school optical illusions to make his hobbits teeny tiny in comparison to all the wizards, orcs, and elves of Middle-earth. Using camera angles, cropping, and the actor's relative positioning, the effect known as forced perspective makes them appear to be differently sized than they actually are. In theory, it's simple. In practice, it meant that many shots had to be staged down to the millimeter throughout the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as the Hobbit trilogy a decade later. Liquid Metal Evil. In 1991, Terminator 2 was a groundbreaking example of the power of digital effects, boasting CGI that went miles beyond anything else that had been done. However, what made the movie so spectacular wasn't the CGI alone, but the way James Cameron seamlessly integrated the computer-animated cuts with practical effects. For every purely digital shot of T-1000 slithering around in a liquid metal form, there was a scene rendered the old-fashioned way, with puppets and expert camera work, giving the film a sense of real-world weight. Most incredibly, every time the T-1000 was blasted apart, Stan Winston's special effects team would bring in a mangled metallic puppet complete with a cast of actor Robert Patrick's head to thrash around. In the T-1000's last moments, the blown-up puppet is so seamlessly intercut with motion capture effects that you can't even tell where one ends and the other begins. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.